We have some questions, Dr. Craig, that we've received. We get a lot of questions on the nature of time, and this in particular is on the arrow of time. And a lot of the things that we've talked about in this podcast are in the popular culture right now with the movie Interstellar at this recording, which deals, I haven't seen it yet, I keep wanting to go see it. I know you haven't seen it yet, but so many people have suggested podcasts on that because it deals with the A theory versus the B theory of time, and we have material on that distinguishes those two at Reasonable Faith. First, this questioner says, I'd like to thank you for your work in making an intellectually rigorous case for the Christian faith. It is a genuine pleasure to read your work. In particular, I have found your work on the Kalam cosmological argument fascinating, and I am especially pleased with the efforts you have gone to engage with the physicists in this area. Since I study physics and have a keen interest in cosmology, I felt particularly drawn to your work. As a result of this, you helped spark an interest in philosophy as well, and so reading philosophy has since become a favorite hobby of mine. Anyway, my question concerns, unsurprisingly, the Kalam argument. It can be succinctly put as, what sort of beginning is necessary in order for the Kalam argument to work? Let me try to explain where I'm coming from. As you've explained many times before, the Kalam argument is rooted in an A theory of time, or at least a theory of time on which temporal becoming is objective. The reason for this is that on such a theory, beginning to exist is equivalent to coming into being out of nothing, and we have a strong metaphysical intuition that this is metaphysically absurd. I think this makes sense, and I think insofar as we accept a dynamic theory of time, this intuition is correct. I am still agnostic on whether a dynamic theory of time is actually correct, but it strikes me as certainly plausible, and I'll grant it here. Now, Bill, we're going to skip to the end because it's a long question here, but he sums it up this way. To sum up, my questions are as follows. What sort of beginning is equivalent to coming into being out of nothing? Are all beginnings equivalent in this way, or only some? To give a particular example, do models of time with arrow of time reversal have a beginning with this equivalence? And finally, what physical arrow of time should we identify with the metaphysical arrow postulated by the A theory of time?
All right.
Wow.
There's a lot to unpack there, Kevin. All right, let's take the first question. What sort of beginning is equivalent to coming into being out of nothing? What I'm talking about when I say come into being out of nothing is something that comes into being without a cause of any sort. Aristotle distinguished various kinds of causes. For example, efficient causes, which produce the being of the effect, or material causes, which is the stuff, the matter out of which something is made. So, for example, Michelangelo is the efficient cause of the statue David, but the block of marble that he sculpted is the material cause for the David. And when I speak of something's coming into being from nothing, I mean something that comes into being utterly uncaused. It has no material or efficient cause or any other sort of cause at all. So I think that already answers the second question. Are all beginnings equivalent in this way, or only some? Well, obviously, they're not all equivalent. Many things that come into being have causes. In particular, they have material causes. So, for example, when a person comes into existence at the moment of conception, the material causes would be the stuff out of which the egg and the sperm are made, and the sperm and the egg would be efficient causes that produce this new individual. When a carpenter makes a chair, the chair comes into being as a result of the causal activity of the carpenter. Here's the efficient cause of the chair, and the wood which he assembles into the chair is the material cause of the chair. So Obviously, not all beginnings are beginnings from nothing. In fact, actually, I argue there is nothing that comes into being out of nothing. This is metaphysically absurd. There must be at least an efficient cause, even when there is lacking a material cause. So this is the point, that it's metaphysically absurd to say that something comes into being without a cause of any sort. But in our experience, normally the things that begin to exist, that we have interaction with, have both efficient causes and material causes. Now, to give a particular example, Andrew writes, do models with arrow of time reversal have a beginning with this equivalent? Now, what's he talking about here? He's talking about a model of the universe like the one defended by Sean Carroll in the debate we had at New Orleans Baptist Seminary last year on the evidence of cosmology for the existence of God. Carroll proposes a model in which the so-called arrow of time is running in one direction toward our future, what we call the later than direction. But if you go back far enough into the past, he says the arrow of time reverses and starts to go in the other direction. Now, if you take that literally and seriously as a piece of serious metaphysics, then this would not be an example of an eternal universe, because that mirror universe on the other side of the time reversal point is in no sense our past. That is a different universe with a different arrow of time. It is in no sense an earlier stage of our universe. So if you take that kind of model with metaphysical seriousness, it would postulate a beginning of two universes without any sort of physical material cause for such a thing, because one of those universes is in no sense the cause of the other. They are unrelated temporally. The one is not in the future of the other, and the other is not in the past of the one. They are two different universes that share a common origin point. And the question would be, what caused those universes to come into existence? Now, in fact, Kevin, I don't take those models featuring a time reversal metaphysically seriously. Why?
Well, where did that come from? I mean, who came up with that? Is
Where
that a
it
new
comes
model?
from is identifying the arrow of time with the direction in which entropy is increasing.
Okay.
It is treating time as though it were something that is physically determinable, so that the direction in which entropy is increasing, that is thermodynamic disorder, that direction is the future.
Would it look like this? This arrow is going this way, and this arrow is
Now,
going
our
that way?
listeners can't see what you're doing.
I have two pens end to end.
Right.
And
And the points are in opposite directions.
Yes, and they mirror each other in a
Right.
sense. And we're interested in that area right there, where they reverse.
Right, and I would say that you have exactly what you have. You have two pens there if you take this as a metaphysically serious model of reality.
Mm-hmm.
But that assumption, or that assumes that the arrow of time is to be identified with the arrow of entropy increase. Because on this side of that mirror surface, entropy is increasing toward our future. But on the other side of that boundary, entropy is increasing in the other direction. And that's why the claim is this is a reversal of the arrow of time. Entropy increases in both directions away from that common boundary. And so the claim is time reverses. I think that's metaphysically absurd. Entropy increase is not to be identified with the direction of time. It is merely a physical measure of time. But time is a metaphysical reality that can exist quite independently of any clocks or physical measures of it. And I think this is very easy to see. Just imagine God existing alone without creation, and He's counting down to the moment of creation. 3, 2, 1, let there be light. Mm-hmm. Well, clearly, the succession of mental events in God's mind, counting down, is sufficient to create a temporal series, wholly in the absence of any physical universe or natural laws of any sort. So at the very most, the direction of entropy increase can serve as a measure of time, but it is not time itself. So in these so-called time reverse models, what you've really got going on, I think, Kevin, is a universe in which entropy is decreasing from eternity past for infinite time until it gets to this neck in the hourglass, and then entropy begins to increase on the other side of that. And that is thermodynamically impossible. It contradicts the second law of thermodynamics to think that you could have a universe which, in defiance of the second law of thermodynamics, is for infinite past time declining in entropy until this point where then entropy begins to increase again. So I would say, in answer to his question, that this is not an example of a true reversal of time. It's merely a reversal of entropy increase, and as such, it's physically impossible. These models are physically ruled out. So finally, he says, what physical arrow of time should we identify with the metaphysical arrow postulated by the A theory of time? If there is this metaphysical time that is beyond physics, well then what physical arrow ought we to identify with it? Well, what I've argued in my work is that the cosmic time that measures the duration of the universe from its beginning is a plausible measure of God's metaphysical time. The cosmic time that measures the duration of the universe is observer independent. It's not relativistic in the sense of being bound to any particular reference frames. It is the same for any observer in the universe. And this is the proper time of the existence of the universe. It is how long the universe has existed from the moment of its creation. And as such, I think the universe serves as a sort of clock for God. In fact, quite literally, the universe is God's clock. It provides the closest physical measure of God's metaphysical time and is how much time has elapsed since the moment at which God created the universe.
Yeah, and I think I asked you before, even when you see some of these documentaries on TV and they talk about clocks slowing down at the speed of light and in different circumstances, slowing down in reference to what? There would have to be another clock by which to measure that you're slowing down, by which to gauge the slowdown.
Well, that depends on which type of time dilation you're talking about. In the special relativistic theory, the clocks simply slow down relative to each other.
To each other, okay.
In the general theory, the clocks in a gravitational field run slower than ones which are not in it. But neither of those has anything to do with the cosmic time that I'm talking about, okay, which is the proper time of the universe. It measures the duration of the universe, and I think is the physical time that is most plausibly to be identified as the measure of God's time.
One more question today, Bill. I think this is great. So, Dear Dr. Craig, my 13-year-old daughter asked me, what was God doing before He created the universe? I don't know how to answer. I did not and don't know how to answer. A lot of people can relate. I somebody will ask me that from time to time, and I still don't know quite where to start. I go, well, based on, you know, you have to start. Sometimes it's kind of hard to know where to start on that. Eventually, I'll get it out, but it just takes me about 30 minutes.
Well, I imagine this is hard to help a child grasp based upon the difficulty I found adults grasping this. But I think he should tell her that time began at the moment of creation. Now, between us, we don't know that that's true. God could have been creating angelic realms prior to his creation of the universe, or he could have been counting down to creation in the way I imagine. But since we have no reason to think that God was doing anything of that sort prior to creation, for simplicity's sake, it's easiest to just say time began at the moment of creation, so that there really isn't any moment before creation. That's purely a product of your imagination. And God, existing alone without the universe, was enjoying the fullness of the love relationships between the three persons of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, in a changeless, perfect state of happiness and interpersonal transparency between the three persons of the Trinity. So that would be the way I would answer the question.
Very good.